Look at the man. He's always been a good-looking fella, Todd. And just ask him. It's been a competition between he and I as the sexiest men of the Melbourne Football Club. I think he gets me. Todd, what do you reckon?
Oh, well, I haven't actually heard that we were competing, Russell, but I've always been the fan favourite. You know that.
That's a standard Todd Viney answer. I should have expected that.
How many men of Melbourne calendars did you do?
I didn't do any. Didn't do any. How many did you get?
I think I was back to back.
You didn't have a lot of competition though, really, did you? Back in the day, who was the next best?
Stephen Tingo had a fair following in the day, and
he did.
Andy Lovell was quite buffed at a certain point
before
he jumped ship.
And he had the jaw, didn't he, Chopper? The jaw.
Oh yeah, he was a fearsome looking fellow Tasmanian, Russell, where you're from.
Yes.
His dad was a world champion wood chopper, so he followed in his dad's footstep with the broad shoulders and strong and strong.
Oh, mate, there's some names that you're bringing up already that have got some of the fans that are on here. Because I don't know if you've caught this show, Toddles. We've been doing this since Geelong. I told you on the phone during the week. We've been doing this since the Geelong game down in Geelong where we won out with Max's kick after the siren, which was amazing. But there was this lull that you would have felt where you just had to sit down on the couch. You couldn't, the fans love to go out after that down Swan Street and talk about it and have a drink. But you can't do that when you're in lockdown. So we decided to do this show. And I've just had these guys come on every week just to be a part and feel a part of this, this club. And they've been throwing names at me from the start. They want to see, they want to know where they're all at. And you've just reeled a couple off then. Stephen Tingo we've had on the show, but we probably haven't mentioned Chopper Lovell, have we? Where's Chop at the moment? Do you know?
Well, I think he had spent quite a few years up in Queensland. He was coaching at the Gold Coast Suns. So I'm not sure he's still involved with the Gold Coast Suns, but I think he's still based up there.
Yeah. He'd be loving it up there. He'd be loving it up there. He'd have his shirt off all the time.
No, well, it was hard to get in the gym with the Stinger and Chopper at one particular time. Glenn Lovett fancied himself in the gym, but just didn't have the same sort of stature as those two other.
No.
I think he might have done he was more the smart, intelligent type,
yes.
Probably appealed to a different market.
Mysterious.
Than Stinger and Chopper. But
absolutely.
The thinking man, Glenn.
He was. And Matthew, I've got to read you Matthew Nolan's message. I don't know if you can see on the screen there, Toddles, but Matthew says, my mum had many fantasies about Todd back in the day. Used to make my ears bleed hearing about them.
No, that's awkward if your mum's telling you about it.
It's very, very awkward. But let's get into it. Let's crack into this. We'll talk about the team now because I know you're very close to it. Obviously, we know that. But what people love to hear about mostly is back in the day. The era that they used to go to the G when they had time. These guys that are jumping on now, and saw some of the superstars like Stretchy and Straubs and these kinds of those players of that ilk. You came through at a really exciting time for the Melbourne Football Club. There was a lull for a lot of years, Barassi coaching, and then these young kids come through like you and Gary and all those names that you've just reeled off, and you had some success for a while. What was the difference back then, mate? What did you feel was the difference that got this club going again through the late 80s, early 90s?
Well, it's probably not too dissimilar to the re-emergence of the team that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, it's built on youth. So we had, in 1987 was my first year, and as you say, Ron Barassi had just finished his 5-year plan. John Northey was the coach who was in his second year as coach. I think he started in 86. But really that team that's played finals in 1987, which was the first time since 1964, I reckon, was the first time. I think at the time it was like 23 years since we'd played the finals, but it was on the back of the under-19 premiership team. You had guys, Graham Yates, Greg Healy, you mentioned Steve O'Dwyer, but a lot of the guys had come through, Gary Lyon, Brett Lovett, had come through under-19s with Melbourne. I think Brett came from Hawthorn, but there was a lot of guys, Brett Bailey, who else? a lot of the guys came through the under-19s. And then they managed to, Cameron Schwab was the recruiting manager at the time, and managed to get a few players like Earl Spalding, the Duke, who's a famous Melbourne man, and then went to Carlton and played in the premiership. The Duke, Warren Dean, and myself came in 1 year in 1987.
Yeah.
That was Robbie Flowers last year. He was really one of the few that were left. Steve Nick was the best and fairest winner.
Yeah.
Alan Jarrett was an older guy. That Brian Wilson, Brownlow medalist, that was still playing. Obbo came. He was a fantastic player. So it was on the back of under-19s players, and then a few interstate recruits that we managed to pick up. The Phoebes came from Tasmania, Stephen and Matthew. But we had a couple of really good players like that came from nowhere. Doug Coop, Dean Sharon, they were tough as tough, you know. And we were a real competitive team. I reckon teams hated playing us in the late 80s, early 90s. Probably team was a little bit more talented, but having said that, when you look at some of the names that played in that period, we had some unbelievable talent. Steins, Lyon, Jakovic, Neitz, Schwartz.
Grinter.
Brett Lovett was an All-Australian halfback.
Yeah.
Sean White was a freak. So there were some guns there.
There's some fans reeling off names here too, like Flintoff, Newport, Eichhold. I mean, it really was a stacked team. And if I think back on it, you know, I was a very young man, but you learn stuff when you're at the club. And I've heard so many times from the people that we were just really unlucky with our finals campaigns, with our setups, with having to go to West Coast 1 year with a couple of weeks off another year. Because of a draw, you know, it just seemed like you guys were just right ready, but you're always up against this Hawthorn team that was stacked with players like Brereton and Dunstall. But you were there was a time there where you were better than that team. You know, you would have thought that you were better than Brereton and Dunstall and Buchanara and Dipper and names like that. I mean, they're infamous names, but you were a better team than them in some of those years.
We had a great record against Hawthorn in that period, the late 80s, and we obviously came up against the Hawks in the 88 grand final. You know, we played them in the 87 prelim, and I think during that year when we were just starting to emerge, we might have beaten them, and they were one of the super sides. And then the 87 prelim, you know, we were in front for the whole game up until the famous last kick of the day after the siren. So, no, we had a great record against the Hawks. They blew us out of the water with their class, and we were probably a little bit inexperienced and didn't handle the grand final that well in 88. But we had some super teams, super talent, and we just couldn't quite get there. Yeah, we played a prelim against West Coast. I mean, they were once again a superpower, state team, some unbelievable players that played in that team, and we couldn't get over the line. Yeah. So we were around the mark. We've got some injuries too at certain stages. You know, the Ox broke down with his knee. Gary hurt his back and struggled. Stinger got pushed through a glass window and had a lot of trouble with his hip from then on. Glenn Lovett had some calf injuries. A guy called Paul Primke, fans would know. He was an unbelievable player from South Australia, unheralded, but was rarely beaten. Loved playing on Kernahan, beat him all the time. Yeah. And he got a disease in his back and never played again. Yeah. So there was some hard luck stories, but ultimately we just couldn't quite get it done, which haunted me and my teammates and Melbourne supporters up until this year, of course.
Oh, look, mate, and I feel that pain because, I mean, you were still at the club when I first arrived, and you know what the club was like then. I mean, it may have been okay 15 years before, but the facility itself had become so dilapidated and so far behind what everybody else was getting into. And because of our financial status, we weren't able to sort of keep up, which would have been incredibly frustrating for you, no doubt, being the elder statesman and the leader at the club at the time. You would have loved to have been able to maybe use that sports science that we didn't have to maybe in 2000 and look, 98 when you were there, we were a fantastic team, really balanced, I thought. And yes, we did have those injuries, but some young kids coming through as well. What about 98 around that era? These young kids coming through, did you feel like, well, yes, maybe you were a chance again?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like 98 was the year. We played in the prelim, so that was Dana's second year?
Second year, yeah.
Second year, yeah. And he had amazing.
First year. First year.
First year, yeah.
Yep.
No, it was first year. Amazing impact so quickly. He came in, he really taught his game style, demanded a lot. Probably for the first time, he really challenged some of us older guys. I can remember Neil speaking to the group saying, for the 4K time trial, if you want to play in the midfield, you're going to have to run under 15 minutes. And then after the meeting, I went up and said, "G'day and welcome to the club." He said, "What time do you run the 4K?" And I said, "I got no idea. I've never really timed myself." And he said, "Well, why not?" I said, "I guess I just never really thought it was that important." He goes, "Well, if you don't get 15 minutes, you won't be playing in the midfield. Now, do you think it's important?" So, all of a sudden, he put me on notice right from that first meeting. And that was the same with some of the other senior guys. Got the best out of us as an older group of players. And you young guys came and played through the roof and got us, I think we beat West Coast over there, didn't we? Really young team.
Yep.
Early in the year, and we showed that we could beat anyone. And we went all the way to a prelim and lost to North. But I certainly did feel like that year we were as close as any of the years I was at Melbourne.
Yeah.
And so it was there, but just couldn't quite get it done.
That first meeting must have been early in the piece, because guys that are watching this show, and there's so many comments here, Toddles, that I just can't get to because there's so much other great stuff that we're talking about on the fly. But we had to do a pre-season. It was at Caulfield Grammar, wasn't it, down there? And the luxurious lawns and the beautiful surrounds of the Caulfield Grammar. And we only went there is because Danners was going to teach us this new game plan, right? And it's really my first year. At 97, we went up to Bond Uni. We were Barmy, had been there a couple of years, and we know that he didn't really do too much in team meetings. It was all pretty much get out and do what you can do. But with Neil, he was going to start us again from scratch. Bring your textbooks, because we're going to be learning this, right? And we had this competition over this 4 or 5, 6 week period where we were going to learn this game plan, and there would be a quiz at the end. There was going to be a quiz. You had to answer all the questions that he'd been talking about. I think it might have been 30, 40 questions. And a week later, Danners gets up in front of us and goes, "The results are in. I'm going through the top 5 best marks." And you should have heard the room absolutely cry foul when he read out the winner was Todd Viney. You got nearly every question right. Now, you must have, that first meeting scared you. You must have had your thinking cap on and your listening ears.
I was wired in because he put me on notice, and as one of the senior guys, I was never that great at school, but by God, I listened and studied that few days we had a call for grammar, and it came out ducks of the school, which wasn't too hard to beat some of my dumb teammates.
No, Gary wasn't happy. Gary threw his book.
He's very ultra competitive, Gaz. So
he
wouldn't have liked that.
He thought he had you covered there. And look, you had some great players. And I related this story last week when I said we were going to get you. I said that maybe it was the video I did yesterday. I was talking about how, and you're going to tell a story in a minute about what you got me doing. But here's a story. We were doing a training session over in Malvern. There's a bit of parkland over there, and we were the nomads, weren't we? We just, whenever there was grass, we'd go and take over, because we had no frigging home ground until April, because the cricket was always being played on the Junction Oval. But that's another story. Anyway, we're over there in Malvern, and Adam Uze's in your training group. You've got the brand new Porsche Boxster. What a car that was. That was just the best. We were all salivating over, going, how good is this? Schwabby's like, yep, Todd's deserved this. He's earned this. He spent a bit of money on it. Might look a little bit over the top, but he deserves it. You've thrown the keys to Adam Uze very confidently. I don't know why to this day, and said to him, can you just reverse the car for me? Or maybe he asked if he could. Can you tell the fans what happened next?
Well, then he proceeded to reverse my car straight into, I don't know whose car it was, but he reversed my brand new $130,000 Porsche into someone else's car, and then he came back very, very sheepish and very apologetic. Promised that he was going to look after and do it, but yeah, that was a sad day, and I'm surprised my temper held in good stead, because you wouldn't be coaching the premiership midfield today if I let go.
No. I said it's one of those stories that lives in infamy amongst my era. How could you crash He's just brought his brand new baby home, and you've stacked. Anyway, a question's just popped up, and we'll jump around because it's a good thing to answer these questions. Jenny Love wants to know, how did it feel for you? And we saw the footage on the Melbourne Footy Club website of you being surprised by your boy bringing the cup into the room. And I must say, you were very astute at the time. What a big bushy beard you had. You were looking very wild man, a Borneo bushman. But anyway, the question is, how did it feel when you saw that bit of silverware?
No, it was amazing. I mean, I've looked at. I mean, it's been picked up by a few of the different social media sites and shared again. And I've read a couple of comments to say it was staged, and I didn't, like I didn't see the camera was on me or whatever. But it was a total surprise, total shock. Really surreal that Jack came up with it. I mean, we've spoken about it. We tried so hard to get one ourselves and couldn't quite get there. And then your son takes up the challenge, goes to the club that you played at. And we struggled for a period of time. His first 3 or 4 years, baptism of fire, and really probably questions you as a father and a mother. At some stages we were saying, did we do the right thing in sending Jack to Melbourne? Of course, that was some of our deepest, darkest times, but he was fully committed, and to see him go through those tough times, come out the other end, win a premiership, and then for him to bring it up here and surprises, it was really special. I took it on its own tour of the farm. I've taken it out to see the cows, took it to my favourite spots, taken photos with it, top of the hill. So I've really cherished the opportunity to take some photos and put it in the bank for the future.
It's a wonderful thing to see, and it's because you're seeing a father with a son. And we got a photo here. We'll flick this up as well. This is the early days of when Jack first got to the club. Look at you two there. It was so similar in the look. The Viney genes really, it really is dominant there. He'd be 18 there, probably 17 there in that photo. You're less.
I think he might have been just 17 because he sort of signed before he turned 18. So he would have been probably 17 years of age.
Yeah.
Seems like in some respects doesn't seem that long ago, but all of a sudden I think he's played 9 years of senior footy. So now he's one of the older. He's 27. So he's played some senior footy, and now he's one of the senior guys. Young guys coming in. Jake Bowie, 7 games, 7 wins in a premiership, and 18 years of age. So he's one of the older guys.
Mate, and you've got a lot to do with this premiership as well, because you've stepped away now, but you were there very present for probably the first 3/4 of his career thus far, Jack, working, obviously at the club in recruitment, and then a few various roles, and you were even a coach at some point along the way. So you were everything to everyone down at the Melbourne Football Club. But there's still some more stories about Jack I want to talk about, because as I said, the fans love the stories. And here's a great story. You come from Tasmania and you sit down in the junction over, you're throwing your kit, you get there early, and you're sitting at your new locker. I was number 42. And then slowly at around about 4:30, which is just before training time, the stars walk in. Jimmy Steins walks across the room, doesn't say anything to anyone, which was typical of Jimmy Steins back then. Get in, get out. And then Gary walks in, and then Todd walks in, and all these Steve Tingo superstars. And I'm just sitting there going, this is amazing. This is phenomenal. I've really hit the jackpot. I've watched these guys on TV, Schwarter, the Tingos we knew, the Phoebes we knew because of Tasmania. And then after a few months in pre-season, you're working your ass off to show these guys that you can really do it. Todd says to me, Robbo and a couple other young kids, you're coming around to my house. I'm going to buy you lunch. You're going to have lunch on me. You might have to do a little bit of work for it, but you're coming to my house anyway. So, I was, wow, going to Todd Viney's house is going to be amazing. We roll up to the house, and it's fully in renovation phase. Like, the house is hardly a friggin' house. It's a shell, right? The front half of it, old Federation style house, I suppose you would say. And we were all given a room to demolish. And I'm not talking demolish the plaster that was the gyprock plaster. We're talking the old horsehair bloody plaster. I spent a day in one room, and then I was out the front painting, and I got a sandwich.
Yeah, but it had the lot. It was a sandwich of the lot.
It was a good sandwich.
I looked after my workers, but no, it was trying to build relationships with the younger teammates, get to know them who could work and work hard. There was a bit of method behind my
Yeah.
madness,
Okay. Right. Yeah.
and I was a little bit taken aback with some of your work ethic early days, because you did spend a lot of time asking for drinks. Can I get a drink now? Can I get a drink? Can I go to the toilet? No, Russell, you can't go to the toilet until you pull down that wall.
There was a lot of question marks over me back in those early days. I'm sure you had to report back to Danners on what was going on. Oh wow, no, they were good days. And I did say we were going to talk about the in the pre-show before you came on, Dob. I'm going to talk about the parenting style with Jack, because to be honest, it was hard for you and Meg to raise that boy of yours. Menace from the start. I knew he was a menace. When we used to go to after-match functions, Toddles, and you remember this really well, we'd have to go over to the Redleys over in the Great Southern Stand, or we'd be sent off to a room just to give back to the supporters. They were the days, they were great. Well, your boy would be with Meg in one of the rooms, and full of sugar, no doubt. After a game, he's running around and just knocking in everyone. And I remember getting headbutted probably about 10 different on 10 different occasions by your boy right in the center of the body there. He was brilliant at finding the soft spot. He was hard at it as a 10-year-old. Raising that kid must have been a full-time job for you.
No, yeah, it was a challenge. He didn't, as you say, he didn't sit still. He had plenty of energy, and he's always had some sort of fascination about hurting people. Like you just said, he just managed to always find that soft spot. And I think we used to come into the gym at the Junction Oval, and it was the gym racks that used to have to take a pin out of the gym weights to stick it in the different weights you wanted. Well, somehow he found a way of grabbing one of the rubber tubing that we used to have to wrap the ice packs around our legs to keep it tight. He used to take it from one side of the lat pull down machine to the other, and then pull out the pin and use it as a human, as a missile projecting gun that used to fire at people. And I think he might have broken a window at one stage, or mirror at some point.
Yeah.
Which you weren't that happy with, because you couldn't see yourself doing curls.
Of course.
No, he was full on. He was full on, and we always thought maybe it would come to good at some point. But
well, it has. It has come to good, because we love the way he crashes in. So the next question, I think it was a question that somebody posed before. Do you see yourself in the way he plays? Do you see a lot of what you do, what you did, in what he does? Because I like this question, because I've got a son at the moment. He's playing basketball, and sometimes you'll see a move here or there, and you go, "Oh, that was similar to what I used to do." And it's a joy. It really is a joy to see, that come through. Who was the harder man first? Was it you or him?
Well, I'm amazed at. I'm 183 centimeters, and I played at, probably 89, 90 kilograms. So I was quite a big midfielder for the time. Probably not compared to these days Patrick Cripps and the Bonds and all those guys, but for the time, I was a big midfielder, and I played the way Jack plays. It's head in, head down, and straight through, and tackle hard. And compete all day. Well, he does the same thing, but he's 178 centimetres, and he's still quite strong. He might be 84, 85 kilograms, but, I was a lot bigger frame. So his body's taken a bit of a pounding, because he plays the same way, but just doesn't have the same sort of protection that probably I did.
Yeah, some padding.
I had a bit more padding, yeah. And, but no, I see bits and pieces. I mean, with similar styles, we're just competitors, and I think and most weeks you probably knew what you were going to get out of me, the way I played, and you probably know what you're going to get out of Jack most weeks too.
Well, what I love about Jack is we still see a little bit of the old footballer in him, and I don't mean the way the old way he used to play. I mean the old footballer, the stuff that we grew up with, which is, if there's someone to be lined up and hit, he's going to do that job, but do it fairly. I think his question to the coach at the start of the start of grand final week was, I've got a great game plan. First play for you, coach. I've got a great first play, and Goody's waiting for this is going to be a beautiful bit of tap work by Max down to someone, and we're going to weave it through and get to the forward line. But no, it was nothing to do with that. It was who he was going to line up and belt at the first centre bounce, which is absolutely brilliant. I love that about him, that he's still got that old footballer in him.
Yeah, no, and I think the first, I guess the question mark over our preparation was one game in 28 days, and are we going to come out ready to play? And the first contest, I think it was centre bounce, and Jack is in there, and he manages to get hold of one of his former schoolmates in Jack McRae, and gets hold of him twice, and I think set a bit of a tone and said, okay, well, no, Melbourne looked like they're ready to play and they mean business. And I think that was probably a good first 30 seconds for us.
Yeah. I love the way he played his whole final series, actually, because you got track, and your Oliver and Max is in there doing some great things, whereas your boy's not the flashy one doing that because of his height as well. And Clayton Oliver's 6'2", 6'2". He's your modern day midfielder, which is deceptive. You stand next to him, and I feel dwarfed standing next to him. I played bloody centre half forward, for crying out loud. But he's your in and under, and he's your quick hands, and he comes out with 30 possessions every single week. So he was so valuable to our midfield makeup because it takes all types. You can't have one style in there. You can't have three nuts in there. You've got to have some silk. You've got to have some outside, and you've got to have some inside. So a good mixture. I love the way he played his final series. But let's not keep blowing wind up his ass, because it's all about you this week on the show.
I need some more love.
Yes.
Need more love.
And you're getting it. Don't worry. The fans here are just all over it. They love it. I think it was on that very same day. It might have been a different day where you invited us over to have a catch up to your house, and the lovely Meg made us some food. But Jack was running around like crazy, and he was being naughty. He really was, Jack. Guys that are watching the show, Jack was a naughty boy sometimes, and boys with energy are naughty boys because you're trying to relax and have a good time and chill with the adults, and you've got this kid running through the room and jumping on everything. Well, the coffee table, you might not remember the story, you might remember it, Todd, but I certainly do. The coffee table, he kept getting on the coffee table, and you did not want him to get on the coffee table. You were like, Jack, get off the coffee table. And he looked at you, and with a defiant look on his face, like, no, stuff your dad. I'm going to get on the – he got up a bit higher. You're like, get off the coffee table. He continued to get up on the coffee table, and he put his head down near the wood. You grabbed his head, and you banged his head into the wood. Really?
No, I don't think that's true, Russell. I think you're putting a bit of sauce on that story. And I'll end up in jail.
It was only a little. It wasn't a big hit. It was just a little one to let him know that you're being naughty. And he looked up at you like shocked, like, and you looked at him and said, "Don't cry, don't cry." And he didn't. He sucked it in, and he walked out of the room. And I'm like, "Oh, that kid's going to be a killer."
No, they reckon they reckon you're a product of your environment, and I think he certainly wasn't. He wasn't mothered too much. He was sort of get up and get on with it. So I think I'm a big believer in the environment's got something to do with the way your children work out.
How did Meg go with that, your beautiful wife? Because childhood sweethearts, lovely story. All the way through the career, she was by your side. She was a great support, and great support for Jack as well. How did she go with such a crazy boy running through the house?
Yeah, no, he tested everyone, and his mother was, at one point of time when we'd moved to Echuca, and I'd been up there 2 years. Then I got an opportunity to go to Hawthorn and coach with Clarko in 2005. Jack was still in primary school, just started at 208 with Oliver Wines, and he got into that environment, and it was a great education for him because there's kids from all different backgrounds in the country. Like, he was at Camberwell South, and pretty much all the kids at Camberwell South were all cookie cutters of each other. All the mums drove the same car, dads had similar jobs. Yep. Then he went to Echuca, and then it was the wild, wild west in some regards. And he got bullied a couple of times, or they tried to bully him. And one day he turned up and he got into a fight. And I was living down in Melbourne, basically. I was going back to Echuca on Tuesday night, spending Wednesday, and then coming back 5 o'clock Thursday morning. So
Yeah.
his mum had basically full time.
Yeah.
And she had a couple of visits to the headmaster's office, and that culminated with Jake being bullied by this kid, and unfortunately got into a fight, and hit him and broke his thumb, and then he had to go up, and Meg had to go in, and she ran me in tears, and I thought something had happened, some sort of accident.
Yeah.
So I had to get in the car basically in front of the Echuca headmaster, 208, to explain Jack's behaviour. So he had his mother in tears quite a few times, particularly because he took advantage that I was in Melbourne and he was up there just with her and ran right over everyone. But he's got a good relationship with his mum. Mum's been by his side all the way through, and now if I talk footy with Jack, I get told to shut up.
Shut up. Yeah.
But if his mother talks to him, he listens. So there you go.
I love that. That's awesome. Hey, country boy, Adelaide boy. We know you came across from Adelaide in the mid to late 80s. We know the story about you being the brat. We got a photo here of you in your early days. Someone just said before, look at the two beautiful grins on the screen at the moment. You and I laughing at a story. Well, what about this cheesy? Look at this one here. Look at that. Oh, what a rooster.
That's no, I had the tips going there for a while. Or was it just the lemon juice? I can't remember. But I think I fell into all the trappings. I reckon that was probably my second year there.
Yeah.
1988. So I look back and think some of the things I did. I said, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I got my hair tipped. I can't believe I got a Porsche. I lost my way for a certain period of time.
Me too, many times. I watch some of the games and look at the hairdos, and then I think about some of the things I did within those games. Like I was just playing on instinct there. There was no real thought thinking through that, because I wouldn't have done that if I was a smarter man. There's a question here I want to go to, because I mentioned the country has a calling for you. You're not a city boy. As much as you probably look like a city boy back then, you're not a city boy anymore. You like getting out of the country. Someone said something about Robbie Flower up in the Murray. Did you catch up with the Tulip much up in the Murray? Was that what the question was, I think?
Yeah. Well, no, Robbie and I became, as I said, my first year was Robbie's last year. I'd actually met him a couple of years before when Melbourne were trying to recruit me, and they sent me to live with Robbie for a week because I thought I'd like to have a sports store maybe down the track,
Yeah.
So Robbie had a chain of sports stores. We became great mates. And my first investment after my first paycheck in 1987, I got $15,000 and I went halves with a speedboat with Robbie Flower. We became great mates. So we ended up going water skiing a lot up at the Murray River with through David Williams, who's a Rochester boy.
Yes.
Who gave me number 12. In fact, he was number 12, then wanted to go to 15, gave me number 12. So he lived up at Rochester. We went water skiing with Tulip and became great mates and bought a boat. So I've always had a loving affection for the country lifestyle.
Yeah.
And went to live in Echuca, down the track after footy finished. But, Robbie was a great mate of mine and someone that I've thought about a lot since we've just won this premiership. He was so diehard, never got to play apart from that last year in finals. So he played 3 finals.
Yeah.
It's just been so rapt to have seen us win this premiership. So I've spoken to his family a little bit over this last month or so, just to touch base. But he was a great man, Robbie Flower.
He certainly was. And you got to play with the great man, which will lead me to a question next. But he mentioned Dirty Dave. I think he's still in Rochester. He's got a tyre business up there, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's the king. He's the king of the Golden Valley. He's got a tyre business, but I think he's one of the wealthiest men in the Golden Valley. I'm not sure it's all tyres, but he's done remarkably well.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you're ever in the Golden Valley or up Rochie Way, see if you can find Dirty Dave, because he's a super footballer back in the day and a great Melbourne man as well.
And a super coach. He was amazing. Amazing coach. Had an unbelievable history of coaching Rochester and had a great rivalry with Simon Eisholt, another Melbourne player that coached Echuca. And so the Echuca-Rochester clashes were
Huge.
Huge, and they used to punch on all the time,
Oh, yeah.
dirty and ice.
Yeah, they built them very hard up in the country, and there's no exception up that way. Rochi and I think I played a game up in Rochester once, and the crowd, it was quite scary, quite intimidating. I thought I'd seen some crowds, but this was I think it was the wet areas behind the goals at one end. And I absolutely copped it from the guys. It's on that bitumen area. One end's just trees, and the other end's a bitumen area. And I reckon there was beer cans thrown at me in the goal square at one stage. So, oh yeah, you got to get out in the country and play footy. That's when you know you're really living. Now, Toddles, the headband question somebody's already asked before. We've got to talk about the tennis because it's another question that was asked. You don't really see, for instance, me with my music and football. Those don't usually go hand in hand. Tennis and football surprisingly does. A lot of guys playing football love their tennis. Neil Danaher loved his tennis. He used to play all the time. Tulip apparently played with you. He was a pretty handy
Good
tennis
player.
player. Yeah.
Good little tennis player. Yeah.
So your tennis history, give us that one, and then of course the retirement and then the coming back and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like most young kids, I played everything when I first started going to primary school. I played football, tennis, and did athletics. And then, you have the opportunity to represent the state in different things. And I represent the state in athletics, then football, and then tennis. And probably football was always my favourite, though. I grew up a Sturt Football Club fan. My dad was involved with the Sturt Footy Club.
You played for Sturt, yeah?
Yeah, football players were my heroes, the
Yep.
Sturt Footy players. But when I got to about first year high school, tennis, I'd just been away to my first Australian team overseas, and I was in the top couple of kids in Australia, really, number one in South Australia for my age. And then, just the ball started rolling where, maybe tennis is the right career path to concentrate on. So I gave up football first year high school to concentrate on tennis.
Yeah.
And then by the age of 16, so at the end of year 10, I went to live at the Institute of Sport in Canberra as part of that team with Darren Cale and the guys like Mark Kratzman. Pat Cash was a year older. Mark Woodford. Mark Woodford wasn't part of that team, but
Good era of tennis.
Yeah, it was a good era. And then I did that for another 2 years, basically 2 years at the Institute of Sport and traveling the world playing. And I just got a bit jaded with it and didn't love it. I was playing because I was good at it and I thought I'd make a career out of it. But I didn't love it like the other guys did. I hated traveling. So I was in Switzerland. I decided I was going to give up. I told the Australian coach I'm giving up. I rang my mum and dad. I ended up having to stay in Geneva, Switzerland for a week by myself while my teammates went on before I could get a flight back. And then I said, well, God, what am I going to do now? And I thought, I'd like to play footy. So I wrote out a bit of a plan to play footy. I got back from Switzerland on a Friday. The Sturt Football Club knew I was coming back through my father. They signed me up to play under-19s the next day.
Yeah.
Took me down to the Oval, got a pair of boots, played under-19s the next day, played full forward, your position. Played the next 3 games. We made the finals, and then we played the finals, and we won the grand final. And then all of a sudden I was away, and then the next year I played senior football for Sturt.
Yeah.
And that's when I got contacted by Cameron Schwab from Melbourne. I went away on a footy trip to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Hawaii with Ron Barassi and the players to get to know them.
Yeah.
And Kevin Sheedy used to fly in, but I decided I wanted to go to Melbourne. And then it all started.
Rest is history.
That was the tennis into football. It happened really quick, and I can't believe that I was playing VFL footy after 2 years playing footy again.
I mean, you don't look back and go, well, I wish I'd gone down that path, because you were able to be a part of so many special moments for the Melbourne Football Club. And I've had time to reflect over the last 6 to 8 weeks since we've won this premiership, or however many weeks it's been. Time is a funny thing since COVID came around. I look back on my career at my time, going from 97 through to 2009. We had our opportunities. We're a good team. and we could have won a premiership. And then, you see your son bring it home with this amazing setup that we've got at the club now. It's just a phenomenal setup. And there's so many people that put a power of work in to get the club to this point. And then they get this amazing glory. But I don't regret a thing. I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, the way I feel now about the club, of course, you and I would have loved to have been premiership players for the Melbourne Football Club, but I feel like I'm part of a tapestry. I feel like I'm a part of this thing. We're all a part of it, and I'm getting that from all the supporters as well. And I'm sure you feel that way. And a question's come up here that I want to touch on: the Western Oval round 2287. Did you play in that game when it was all about do it for Robbie and the Hawthorn game
Yeah,
down in Geelong? What was
yeah.
that
No,
like?
that was my first year. I mean, I concur with what you say. I mean, I've been blessed to be at the Melbourne Footy Club, and it's been a big part of my life since I was a bit older because of my tennis background. So I was
Yeah,
20 when I came over. Had my 21st birthday at Melbourne. After my first game, playing my first game of football for Melbourne, and to be part of that year, we played finals. We had to win the last 6 games of the year. We had to beat Footscray at the Western Oval on the last game, and we needed Hawthorn to beat Geelong down at Geelong, I
yeah,
reckon. So that was a historic game in so many respects because we hadn't played finals for that 23 or 24 years.
yeah,
So to be part of that, and then we were on a mission. We smashed North Melbourne in that first final series. I kicked the first goal from the boundary, which people still ask me, was I actually trying to kick it? Was I centering it? And so I wasn't a renowned goal kicker, Russell.
no,
But then we smashed Sydney in the second game, and both those teams had belted us during the year. Sydney were red hot favourites. Had Kappa and Healy and Diesel Williams, Bernard Toohey. They had a great team. And then we got to play Hawthorn, which becomes folklore in that
yeah,
prelim.
yeah,
And then we played in the grand final in '88. So,
yeah,
I mean, I was blessed under John Northey. We played finals for 7 years in a row. Really good team,
yeah,
really good bunch of mates, great times, great camaraderie
yeah,
with the players and the girls. And then, then I was lucky enough to get into. When I finished playing in '99, Dennis asked me to come back with Jimmy and Gary to do a bit of coaching
yeah,
on a part-time basis. And then I coached, with Clarko at Hawthorn, went to Adelaide Crows, then came back to Melbourne. I spent up to the last couple of years, 9 years back at Melbourne in different roles, as you said,
yeah.
mainly in list management, and a little stint as a standing coach when Dean Bailey finished up. But I've pretty much done everything. I'm a Melbourne person. Melbourne shaped me into the person I am.
Yeah.
And I wanted to come back, after a bit of success at Hawthorn Premiership, after going to Adelaide to try and help the rejuvenation of Melbourne. And I spent 9 years trying to rebuild with a lot of other people
Yeah.
that have put in so much time to get us to that final that we had the other day.
Amen to that. Absolutely. So many. As someone who says here, hi, Todd. Gina Hartskiri says hi. I'm assuming you know who that is.
Gina's great. Gina and Roller, great Melbourne people. Been around when I was playing. Been sponsors of Jack for a long time too. So
Awesome.
great people.
It really is a big family, the Melbourne Football Club, and I've felt that since this premiership too. And I've just felt like, as a player, you feel a little differently to the supporters that have been doing it since they were 2, supporting a team, and we had the opportunity to bring that glory to the club. So I feel like it's a little bit of a different feeling. But what I've felt mostly, Todd, you probably feel the same way as me, is such joy for all of those guys like Gina, like Don McClarty's of the club that have done everything, the people that have supported and put their hard-earned, and it's not just the hard-earned, it's actually the emotion towards it. It's every single day wishing and hoping their whole lives, and it finally comes into fruition. That's such a joy, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think this has really unified the club. Melbourne's been a great club, but because of the lack of success, the ultimate success, like you had success with Neil, and I had success with Neil and John Northey, and there's been eras where we've been respected and a good club, but we've gone without the ultimate success,
Yeah.
and unfairly, I think we've been tarnished with this you know, negative reputation, you know, the snow skiers and all that type of stuff, you know. A bit like Geelong before they became a great team.
Yeah.
The last 15 years, they were the handbaggers, and
Yeah.
Richmond, they were always the perennial come ninth. And until you get the monkey off the back, you know, you've got to cop it. But I really think this premiership's united everyone, all the different eras from past players, people that have been Melbourne people, but perhaps haven't really embraced the club. I think because of a lot of things that have gone on, but I think it's brought everyone together. This is the starting point. I think we put everything else behind us now, and I think we've got a great future. The club's in good hands, good playing list, well administered, good recruiting people, good coaches. And now let's get behind them. And I think that's what this premiership's done, has brought everyone together and brought so much joy.
Yeah. What's the brother Jay up to these days?
Yeah, no, Jay's in Adelaide after finishing at Melbourne. He went back to Adelaide. He went back to the Sturt Football Club. He played footy under Phil Carman, who's a famous person. Played football at Melbourne, fabulous Phil Carman. Didn't have a lot of success. He was captain of Sturt for a number of years, then went on to change clubs, went to North Adelaide and became captain of North Adelaide as well. He took over my family's building business, took over my father. He's got two lovely kids that have grown up. He's sort of retired now, still renovating houses, does an amazing job with his wife Leah, interior decorator, and they come up with some amazing houses in Adelaide. And I've just bought another one, which in Rose Park, which is one of the blue ribbon suburbs. He's doing that up at the moment, so he still keeps pretty busy. He's a lunatic fisherman. Loves fishing, always going to Darwin. Loves posting photos.
Does he catch up with Alan Jakovic? Go fishing with him anytime?
No, he hasn't caught up with Jacko. I mean, Jacko, is he in WA?
Not many people catch. Exactly.
Yeah, I think we don't know.
You know, no one can catch up with Jacko. I'm pretty sure at some stage the law couldn't catch up with Jacko. It's very hard to find, but he loves his fishing. I know that because we had him on the show, Toddles. He came on the show grand final week. He jumped on the bandwagon. He got over there because he was in Perth, obviously, and he got in the rooms. And it was great to see. It was great to see all those Melbourne people coming back to the club. Some questions coming through. The feeling and the emotion from the Demons FC want to know the feelings and emotions for you when we went bang, bang, bang in that third quarter there, when it started to really, really go. How did you feel in those moments?
Well, it's some of the best football I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I just went really quiet. I mean, I was really up and about the first quarter. The second quarter, I thought, oh, God, we've let that slip a bit. We're back into an arm wrestle. And then early in the third, I was like everyone, getting nervous, and we just lost all momentum. So, but then all of a sudden, when we went and kicked those goals in quick succession, I just went quiet. I just thought, you know, can this happen?
Yeah.
Because at some point, I thought, I went into the game thinking we were favourites, and if we played our best footy, we'd win.
Yeah.
Then I started listening to the experts, and one game in 28 days, and 8 players under 21, and I said that is inexperienced, and all of a sudden started thinking some of those negative thoughts. But when we just that third quarter, I just couldn't believe it. Some of the best footy, out of stoppage, some of the most exciting footy I've ever seen. So I went really quiet. And the start of the last quarter, I mean, I'm always a bit of a pessimist being in football for such a long time. You always think, how much can we get up without getting run down?
Yeah.
And we saw in the, when we beat Geelong by 7 goals at Geelong. I mean, I've never seen that happen.
No.
So you don't want to count your chickens, but the momentum just continued to build. And I still felt a little bit surreal. Didn't know how to feel. Wish I could have been there.
Yeah.
Wish I could have been on the ground. Wish I could have been in the change rooms. But it was just with the immediate family, so it was tough.
I can only imagine for you, mate, really. I mean, I watch my son's local basketball game and I feel like running on the court and giving him a high five when he scores a bucket, for Christ's sake. And it's just local basketball. Your boy has just brought home, your boy with all those other boys have brought home the silverware that we've been looking for so long. So kudos to you, mate, and thank you for creating that boy of yours as well, and then the stand-up human that he is, because he really is a good kid, isn't he?
Yeah, no, I think he's represented our family extremely well and represented the Melbourne people really well. He bleeds red and blue, and he has ever since those early days running around the change room. So it's great to see, all that unfold in front of us,
Yeah.
and see him do so well. I've never seen him so happy.
Yeah.
After that win, he FaceTimed me on the ground with Goody.
Yeah.
I've never seen him so happy. And then I see him doing confetti angels in all the confetti on the ground. It was just like he was 7 or 8 years of age,
That's
So
awesome.
he's a pretty serious young guy, but to see him so happy makes you as a parent really happy.
Would do, mate. Goosebump stuff. And look, really, what I like about it is that he's almost offended if you say anything bad about Melbourne. That's how Melbourne he is. He's a player, right? Like, and he's always going to be measured, but he takes such offense to anyone saying anything bad. It's his life plan at the moment. It has been since he knew about football to make the Melbourne Football Club great, and that's the truth. He really, really, really feels it. And look, we as players, we come in, Todd, and we just want to make an impression. We want to do something with our lives, sporting wise. I mean, I didn't have any family affiliation with the Melbourne Football Club. You were starting something when you first got there, so I guess we go through a stage by stage process of wanting to make it in the team. Then we want to bring success to the team after that, and then we're just trying to hang on for dear life. Well, from the moment he's known anything about football, he's just been about making the Melbourne Football Club great, and he's every breath, every sinew of him, he gets offended if you say anything bad about his club, his old man's club, and I absolutely love that. We've been talking for ages. We can go for forever, Toddles. We've got to wind it up because you got to get back to the family. But greatest Melbourne moment for you, other than this premiership win, of course. Greatest Melbourne moments, memories, really. When did you feel, wow, that was a big moment?
Well, for me, playing my first game, playing that 1987 final series in my first year is still, I haven't got a great footy memory, but I can still remember the lead up and that whole final series. So that was certainly a unbelievable time in my life. Young guy playing footy for the first time in Melbourne with such great people. The Melbourne Football Club, Robbie Flower. So that really sticks out in my mind. Captain of the Melbourne Football Club when I was lucky enough to captain the footy club in that 98 season and getting to the prelim final with a real, some great senior players that were helping along the way, leadership, but so many young guys that went on to be champions was really a highlight. Getting to the club after footy, after being a player, and then contributing for 9 years in an administration point of view, to see the growth of the club, to see, probably the 2018, prelim final where we hadn't played finals for a long time, and then we played in that prelim, got to a prelim, and just faltered badly, but we got there. It looked like momentum had really changed. People were starting to believe that we could become good. So I think they were the main times that I think I've been really proud of the club and loved my time at the footy club.
Do you remember in that game out at the Whitten Oval, Western Oval, being pulled over towards at 3/4 time the Melbourne fans? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Someone mentioned it.
Yeah. No, right. John Northey was the master motivator. So he'd do things like that all the time. He pulled us over there, like before a game, he'd make us run right over, right next to the boundary where the Melbourne supporters were to, get us into the mood or the spirit. Know that we were playing for not only ourselves, but for all those people that were at the Whitten Oval or the Western Oval. He was the master at playing mind games and us against them, but representing the footy club, he was very good at it.
I remember seeing some vision of you wrestling Robert Di Domenico and handling yourself very, very well in that fight. Do you remember that?
Of course, you're fighting. It's like fighting a crocodile. You're fighting for your life.
Would he be one of your toughest? Who was your toughest opponent?
There was some great players. I mean,
Yeah.
Dipper was a fierce player, and I guess the times were different back then, the late 80s. You know, you're still very physical. Wrestling and fighting was part of your toolkit, really.
Yeah.
There was guys from St Kilda that were tough, like guys like Greg Burns was super tough,
Yeah.
but playing on Robert Harvey, I found just as tough, but for different reasons, because he just used to run so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I was aerobically fantastic, and I used to be physically sick at quarter time trying to keep up. So running with Robert Harvey was an enormous task, and playing on Nathan Buckley when he first came into the competition was exciting. Tony McGuinness, Chris McDermott from Adelaide.
Yeah.
There was a lot of tough midfielders.
Great midfielders. Diesel and blokes like that.
Yeah, Diesel would give you a whack.
Yeah.
Johnny Platten was a great player. Craig Bradley, different style player to me, but it was one, if you had to try and play on him, you'd have to have your running shoes on because he was an elite endurance player. So there was lots.
Yeah, I remember Hoppy was playing on Robbie Rob Harvey, and I think we got the ball. Sorry, St Kilda got the ball on our half forward flank, so their half back flank, and Hoppy's yelled out to me, "Robbo, go with Banger." And I turn and see Banger, and he'd do that thing where he'd pick a spot that he was going to run to. He didn't care about the ball. He's picking a spot on the other flank down the other end, and he's going to put his head down and sprint there and not stop until he got there. And I thought, oh man, Rob Harvey, I'm 19 years old. I'll follow this fella all the way down. I put everything into my sprint. I could not keep up with him. He took off. He got there and he got the friggin' mark out in front of me. I could not believe what had just happened, and I couldn't breathe. He just had this unbelievable ability to just go. Poor old Hoppy.
Yeah, no, and he could just repeat. So obviously, he won 2 Brownlows. He was a pretty handy player.
Pretty handy player, mate. Todd, that's just been absolutely awesome. And look, there's so many questions that I'm sorry to everybody that I didn't get to a lot of your questions. And there's so many points in there. If you want to have a look back, Todd, there's some great stuff that you might remember. And they've just got a wealth of knowledge, these fans, and memories for them of every single game all the way through to this point. So this has been a real blessing for me, is just to learn so much more about the Melbourne Football Club and stuff from your era, the great players of your era. I'm trying to get them through. I'd love to get Swoop on the show. I know he's back home up in Ballarat that way, isn't he? He's a
I think he might be. I think he might be just out of Geelong now. I think
he's
he might
moved.
be Lara, but something like that. But if you could get Swoop, I mean, he's still an unbelievable follower of football, and still a mad Melbourne person. I haven't caught up with him since we've won this flag, but he'd be so thrilled.
Yeah.
He used to send me messages when I was doing the list management stuff. He'd be sending me messages and giving me a bit of a bake for some and a bit of a pat on the back about others. But he's still a mad Melbourne person. Got such a wealth of knowledge on footy. It'd be great to get on your show.
Gary says, great show, guys. I think so too. That's been really interesting for me because, I mean, it's the early part of my career, was the end of your career, and some really great players that we got to play with. And that's got to be the last question. Who's the best player you ever saw wearing the red and the blue? You've got Gary Lyon, you've got Robbie Flower, you've got the Wizard, Schwarter, Neitz, Gomez, as you said. Glenn Lovett was a walk-up start every single year to the All-Australian team, wasn't he, on the halfback flank? He was unbelievable. So we all get a little bit sort of biased and Chula, but was he the best player you ever saw? Who else?
I think from a whole deep heap of reasons, one being I just don't want to try and narrow it down to one because you mentioned some of those guys, but from a talent point of view, Robbie; from an emotional point of view, Robbie; from a Melbourne point of view, Robbie. So he was just my hero. As a player, as a person, it set such a great benchmark for me to try and live up to as a Melbourne person. So Robbie Flower, in my opinion.
Yeah, good call. I'll go with that. I mean, you don't get a wing named after you on a Melbourne game if you're not a superstar. The kid I think he was from Bentley Way. I think Murrumbina. That's right. Yeah, he used to play down there. Got the call up, this skinny kid, and everyone just thought he was like the water boy or something when he first rolled up. He goes on to be the greatest player the Melbourne Football Club's ever had, which is an awesome story. And he's so sorely missed because it would have been a beautiful thing. Such a great visual would have been to see him, Ron Barassi, maybe, all those great captains of the Melbourne Football Club handling that cup for all our fans. That would have been absolutely super. But that's been super, Todd. I knew it would be. I appreciate your time. A father of a kid that has really done super things. You must be a proud dad. Great chatting, mate. Maybe we'll see you soon at a function. Are you going to come to Ballers catch up?
I'm going to be there on the first Friday in December, Robbo. I'll be there. It's on the rooftop. So I think there's some great celebrations coming up at the MCG with all our supporters to celebrate the premiership. So I'm looking forward to getting there and seeing a lot of people I haven't seen for a long time.
Good on you, Toddles. I'm going to finish this show up here with these fans. I'll let you go, mate. Get back to that lovely wife of yours. Say good day, and I'll see you very soon, December 5th, if I don't see you before.
Good on you, mate. See you. Thanks for having me.
See you, Toddles. Well, there you go. That's just awesome stuff.